Get out. If you can't stand on your own defeat, you don't deserve to stand under my roof. That the word taught I could never forget. Hit that subscribe button before the story begins. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. And please let me know where you are watching from. I remember the night I came home like it was yesterday. Rain battered the streets, cold and relentless, as if the city itself wanted to wash me away. I walked with my duffel bag slung over one shoulder and my degree tucked under my arm, soaked, tired, broke, and clinging to a foolish hope that this time things would be different. Mum opened the door first. Her smile was hesitant, fragile, like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or apologize for something that hadn't even happened yet. Dad, as usual, sat in his chair in the corner, the television droning in the background. His eyes barely glanced up at me, the silence heavy, cutting deeper than any insult. "So, the graduate's back," he muttered, voice rough and tired. "Any luck?" I tried to reassure him, told him I had interviews lined up, that something would come through soon. He nodded, that kind of nod that doesn't believe a word you say. The tension in the air was thick, unspoken, a storm waiting to break. Weeks turned into months, and every day I sent CVS, polished cover letters, and waited for some sign of hope. Each rejection was a small dagger, twisting in rhythm with the silence at dinner. Mum stopped asking how I was. Dad stopped speaking altogether. The house felt colder than the winter streets outside. Then one night, it all broke. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making the cutlery jump. "You've had your chance, Ethan. You're not a kid anymore. You think the world owes you something because of a piece of paper." I tried to explain. The market was bad. I just needed more time. But his anger drowned out my words. "I worked 40 years in a factory," he roared, eyes blazing. "Didn't need a degree to survive. You can't even lift yourself to make something of yourself." And then he said it. The words that cut me deeper than any storm ever could. "Get out. If you can't stand on your own defeat, you don't deserve to stand under my roof." Mum cried silently, unable or unwilling to intervene. I didn't cry, I just stared at him, the man who raised me, the man who broke me in a single sentence. I walked out into the rain, carrying nothing but my bag and my laptop. The sound of Mum's sobs followed me down the street. That night, the city became my home, the pavement my bed, and the storm my only companion. I didn't know it then, but as the rain soaked through my jacket and my shoes filled with water, something inside me shifted. Pain sharpened into clarity. Anger turned into resolve. No one was coming to save me. And if the world had decided I was nothing, I would become everything it never expected. The next weeks were a blur of cold nights and empty stomachs. I slept wherever I could, on benches, in cheap hostels, in the shadows of London's forgotten streets. Every day I hustled, doing the lowest paying work I could find, dishwashing, warehouse shifts, deliveries, anything that kept me alive. My body ached constantly. My hands were raw, my clothes perpetually wet or grimy, my mind exhausted from the endless grind. I tried to contact old friends, just to say hello. Most ignored me. Blake Turner, of course, messaged me once, dripping with smugness. "You all right, mate? You'll land something eventually?" Not everyone's cut out for the city life. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Each word burned, a reminder of how small and invisible I had become. At night, I walked for hours, through puddles and alleys, staring at neon reflections in the rain-slick streets, thinking about the people who had discarded me. The city was alive, indifferent, and it was beautiful in its cruelty. It was during one of those nights, sitting on a cold bench near Victoria Station, that I realized something crucial. Not in anger, not in desperation, but in clarity. The world owed me nothing. The city, my family, my peers, no one was coming to lift me out of this mess. If I wanted to rise, I would have to do it myself. That night, I made a vow. I would never be weak again. I would grind, bleed, and claw my way back. And when I returned, no one would ever dare question my worth again. Life on the streets toughened me faster than any classroom ever could. I learned how to survive, to bend without breaking, to take what the world grudgingly offered. I moved from couch to couch, from temporary flat to hostel, working long days and longer nights. The hunger in my stomach became secondary to the hunger inside me, the fire to prove everyone wrong. Every failure was a lesson, every insult, every dismissal, every mocking message from Blake Turner became fuel. I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. I watched the city, noting how wealth moved, how opportunities hid behind doors that only the prepared could open. And I, prepared, I read, I studied, I practiced, all while keeping my face invisible to the people who had written me off. It was during this time I met Raymond Shaw, a retired trader running a small pawn shop in East London. He noticed the university logo on my jacket one wet morning and called me in. Sharp-eyed, gruff, but wise, he didn't offer pity. He offered lessons. The world doesn't reward the good, he said. It rewards the relentless. You either take the game, or you get played. I listened. I soaked it up. I began to understand that survival alone wasn't enough. If I wanted revenge, not blood, but victory, I needed more than grit. I needed strategy. Raymond became my guide in the shadows. Not a savior, not a friend in the traditional sense, a teacher of the ruthless. He taught me to read markets, recognize opportunities, and value patience. I started small, flipping items, small trades, side hustles that barely covered a week's rent but taught me discipline. Every penny earned became a brick in the wall I was building, a silent monument to my return. He told me stories of his failures, lost fortunes, betrayals. Each one became a lesson, each scar a map to my own success. I began to see my life as a game of patience, observation, and timing. The world had rejected me, humiliated me, but it had also given me time to prepare. Every night, I walked the streets, soaked in rain and cold, imagining my return. Not as a boy seeking approval, but as a man who would not be ignored. Every mocking smile from Blake Turner, every dismissive glance from my father, every shrug from the world, I memorized it. I cataloged it, and I waited. Years of relentless work followed. I combined night shifts with online learning, trading, small businesses, and investment strategies. I failed, I went broke, but every fall taught me how to rise faster, sharper, stronger. Sleep became a luxury, food was fuel, pain was a teacher. By 27, I had built a modest but growing empire. Quietly, legally, and efficiently, I began taking small victories that compounded into wealth. The same streets that had spat me out now bowed, unknowingly, beneath me. I moved through the city like a ghost, invisible to those who once dismissed me. And then came the moment to strike. Not with violence, not with malice, but with power. Blake Turner. He came to me, laughing, bragging, oblivious. He wanted partnership. I smiled. Inside, I was already 2 steps ahead. I approved the deal that would bankrupt him, cloaked in legality and finance. He never knew my hand. The man who mocked me, who had flaunted his success while I slept on benches, had become a pawn in my game. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I let the results speak louder than words ever could. Every small victory fed the fire. I purchased properties, expanded investments, and built a network that made me untouchable. The world finally saw Ethan Cole, not the boy thrown into the rain, but the man who had clawed his way from nothing to everything. Then one winter evening, I returned to Manchester. Same streets, same rain, same house. Mum opened the door, older, quieter, worried. Dad froze, eyes wide, pride and fear wrestling on his face. You were right, I told them. I wasn't fit to live under your roof, so I built my own kingdom. I left a set of keys on the table. the house, fully paid. No words of insult, no shouting, just a cold, quiet demonstration of what I had become. Mum cried. Dad's silence screamed louder than any apology. I turned to leave. You'll see my name again everywhere, I said. The rain fell harder, but I was no longer cold, I was fire. As I drove away, city lights reflecting in the wet streets, I whispered to myself. They made me homeless. I made myself untouchable. Revenge isn't always blood. Sometimes it's success, cold, precise, undeniable. And sometimes, walking away silently, letting the world witness your rise, is the most ruthless revenge of all. I smiled, calm, confident, unstoppable.